So my talk yesterday and this morning about the basic structure of Buddha Dharma. Now this session, with text of 37 bodhisattvas practice, that's now how to meditate in daily basis to improve our mind. All have the text, isn't it? "37 practice of Bodhisattva." This, I think 14th century, maybe 14th, 15th century. One great, well-known Bodhisattva. At that time, everybody, consider him as a genuine Bodhisattva. Do you know what century? Lama Tsongkhapa?
14th, 15th century, Tsongkhapa.
Lama Tsongkhapa 13th page rongu chuje phagwa. Dinama page lo kya specimen. Kanina, right down in what So at that time, in central Tibet, quite famous, two persons. One, Pudin Rinpoche, great scholar. And one, this Thomi Sampo. So he also is a great scholar. I saw some of his writing about certain sort of commentary about the Dodigen and so on. Very good. So, good scholar as well as good practitioner. I think that's the proper way for preservation of Buddha Dharma. Without knowledge, difficult to practice. Without practice, just mere knowledge is just empty, just word. So, combination, knowledge, practice, through practice some experience. Combine these two things are the proper way to serve Buddha Dharma. And also is the proper way for preservation of Buddha Dharma. So these scholars have both knowledge as a scholar, same time serious practitioner. He practiced infinite altruism, so effective. So wherever he lived, some kind of atmosphere of peace. So therefore, in his presence, one wolf and one, I think, deer or sheep very peacefully remain. Because some kind of the atmosphere or vibration about his own practice, like that. So firstly, I'm going to explain this text. And then at the end, I usually give some sort of what's the what's the kasurda. Not ritual, kasurda.
Ceremony for bodhicitta. Ceremony for bodhicitta.
Pledge about altruism. Pledge. You see, usually I do. So I'm going to do that. First, let me sit comfortably. I think at least 2 minutes already sort of wasted. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm ready to talk. Text. Yeah, good. Very good. 나물로 기셔래야. 관계 주긴 로마 미스야. 저좀 찍도 전자가 라마초도 제네신 걸로 따도 고승급에 차살로스. 단남 주안다 댄주 소민도 전에.
So when the texts are written, there is this tradition of paying homage in the beginning. So here, the subject matter of this text, the subject matter is bodhicitta, and because of which the embodiment of all compassion of all the Buddhas, Avalokiteshvara, who is considered the deity of compassion, just as Manjushri is the embodiment of the wisdom of all the Buddhas, appearing in the form of a deity. And as it is said that when you do practice in relation to Manjushri, you'll be able to increase your wisdom. And I can tell this from my own experience. And then by meditating on Avalokiteshvara, the embodiment of compassion of all the Buddhas, and if you recite 6-syllable mantra or Manipeme Hum of Avalokiteshvara, then it helps also to cultivate, to develop compassion. So in this homage verse, the homage is made to the guru, who is not separate from the protector Chandrisik or Avalokiteshvara. And so the purpose of making this homage, where it says, I pay the Avalokiteshvara who, while seeing all phenomena lacking, coming and going, which is like which is the same as what is said in the salutation verses of Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika, where he says there's no coming, no going, no identity, and no difference, and so forth. And so things do not have, what these show is that things do not have any intrinsic inherent existence, meaning there's no independent existence of anything, but that things are dependently arisen. And so, from the perspective of the mind seeing emptiness, the reality, the final reality of everything as it is, there is no coming and going. But in conventional terms, the wisdom which sees conventionalities of things, there is coming and going, and the pure and impure realms and so forth. And so, does it actually, is it sufficient that things are merely designated? Of course, merely designated phenomena do function, but it is not necessary that what is merely designated should necessarily be existent as well. So although something may be projected by your mind, but then it's not necessary that it should exist. So now, how do we make the difference that although things do not have any intrinsic existence, objective existence, that things are merely designated, projected by our mind, but the conventionalities of things is established by way of seeing whether the thing is existent in the perspective of from the perspective of valid cognition, and that it should be established by a valid cognition, a conventional valid cognition, which is secondly, that valid cognition should not be undermined by another valid cognition, conventional valid cognition, and then thirdly, that conventional thing should not be undermined also by the ultimate analysis of things. And so there are these three criteria for something to be conventionally existent. And so the first one is that it should be an object of conventional or valid cognition, and then that it should not be undermined by another conventional valid cognition, and then thirdly, that it should not be undermined by an ultimate analysis. And therefore, the next line says, making single-minded effort or for the good of living beings who do not want suffering but want happiness. And so the Lama Chandra-Sikh, the protected Chandra-Sikh, by seeing the nature of suffering of sentient beings and have this single-pointed compassion towards them and work for the good of these sentient beings. And so you have to understand the meaning of it from these perspectives of emptiness and so others, and without which you will not be able to understand it, this verse. And perfect Buddha's next verse, source of all well-being and happiness and so forth, this verse is the promise to compose the text. And so the Buddhahood comes through causes and conditions all coming together and making a complete cause and conditions. Dignaga says in his Brahmana Samuchaya, Compendium of Valid Cognition, says that the Buddhas are come into being, and this is very significant. So the Buddhas show infallibly what is to be adopted and what are to be discarded. And therefore, in terms of showing these, the Buddha is an infallible being, incontrovertible being. And if that is the case, then is the Buddha someone who has become, who is or who has been a perfect being right from the beginning? No. And therefore the word becoming enlightened, becoming an authority that in Brahmana Samuchaya is very significant. And then this particular verse of salutation to the Buddha by Dignaga is explained in the second chapter of Dhammakirti's Pramana Vartika. Since it is this text is in your language, in Russian language, you should study the second chapter of Brahmana Vartika by Dhammakirti. So because first, in order to explain how the Buddha became a valid or an authoritative person, the Dhammakirti goes through the explanation of what valid cognition and validity means. And so Dhammakirti says the Buddha was not someone who is enlightened without any causes, but he became an authoritative person through causes and conditions. So what are the causes then that made the Buddha an authoritative person? So it's not that the Buddha thought about his own selfish goal of enlightenment or happiness, but in order to help sentient beings, solely to help sentient beings by giving teachings, apart from which there is no real method or means to help. And so the Buddhas may show miracles and then give teachings and then have this full understanding of everything. Out of these three qualities, giving teaching is the way the Buddhas are able to help, through which the Buddhas are able to help sentient beings. And therefore, Buddha was moved by great compassion and to help other sentient beings. And therefore, Dharmakirti says the reason is the having cultivated the compassion. So by developing compassion where it was not there, and then advancing it further once he had cultivated it. And therefore, the Buddha is said to be someone who thinks of helping others, who intends to help others. And then the Buddha is said to be the teacher, meaning that he showed what are to be adopted and what are to be discarded or avoided. And so, to show this, the Buddha must have the knowledge of what he taught to his disciples. And therefore, there is the realization of the Buddha, which is a perfect realization and very stable, enduring. And then there is also the quality of the Buddha, which is the overcoming of all the negativities within himself. And therefore, the Buddha is qualified with his realizations, full realization, and also for attainment of the purification of all negativities as well. And so with these qualities, then the Buddha becomes someone who is an unexcelled teacher. And so here in the text it says, perfect Buddha, source of all well-being and happiness, arise from accomplishing the excellent teachings. And so the negativities that are within us should be overcome then gradually, beginning with the very gross ones and then going into the subtle ones. And therefore, this depends on knowing the practices, not just making prayers, but knowing the practices, and one should actually put what one has learned through teachings and so forth, putting them in practice. And so it says, I will explain the practices of bodhisattvas. And so how do we go about with the practice now? So Nagarjuna mentions there are two goals, that of liberation, which is called the definite goodness, and then higher rebirth. And so, in order to reach that, the first goal, which is definitive goodness, we need to understand emptiness. So without really understanding it, there's no way we can become enlightened and so forth. Therefore, we need, in order to understand emptiness, we need to have intellect, intelligence, and wisdom. And therefore, we need to have a physical basis also where we can use this intelligence to correctly and properly to understand emptiness well. And therefore, we need also to attain higher rebirth. And then on the basis of that higher rebirth, we should develop the factors leading to the definite goodness, the enlightenment. And now, in order to attain the higher rebirth, we need to overcome obstacles and gather the conducive conditions. And therefore, we need to avoid the non-meritorious karmas, which comprise avoiding the 10 non-virtuous actions, which lead us to lower rebirths. And then, by avoiding them, we need to cultivate the 10 positive actions. And therefore, Ayadeva in his 400 verses says, first, avoid the non-meritorious karma, and then in the middle, get rid of this clinging to self, and then finally, destroy all distorted views. And one who understands this is a wise one. And so, we need to first attain the higher rebirth, and then we need to practice the 3 trainings: training of morality, training of concentration, and then practice or cultivate the wisdom, understanding selflessness, beginning with a very gross understanding of selflessness, which is referred in the second line, and then in these 400 verses where it says, finally destroy all views, distorted views, and which is for the purpose of overcoming the all defilements, and particularly the obscuration to knowledge, and for which we need to couple this understanding of emptiness with wisdom. And so with the help of bodhicitta, then you destroy this obscuration to knowledge as well. And therefore, the one who understands this is said to be wise, means that the one who has this complete means to attain or to overcome all defilements, including the obscuration to knowledge, is a wise one. And therefore, to avoid the 10 negative actions, we need to know that they actually obstruct us from attaining higher rebirth. And therefore, once you understand this, then you will want to overcome this obstruction to higher rebirth. And therefore, it says, having gained this rare ship of freedom and fortune, here think and meditate unwaveringly day and night and day, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And so this human life that we have found now, this excellent physical basis and this life, has the 8 leisures and 10 endowments. So in other words, 18 qualifications with this human life, with 18 qualifications, one should develop an enthusiasm or joy to that, thinking that you have now the opportunity to practice the Dharma. And so that you have this physical basis, the precious human life, and then you also have the teaching of the Buddha and teachers who are actually able to help us, teach us the Dharma, and the spiritual masters. And so with these understanding, then you should develop joy in your heart. And it says here in the text, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. So the ocean of cyclic existence means the attaining definite goodness, which is the main purpose or the goal of Buddhism. Merely avoiding the negative actions is there even in the non-Buddhist traditions, Christianity, or whether it's Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, and so forth, Hinduism, and so forth. They also, the practitioners, practice love, compassion, and also not harming others. And so by practicing these principles that are taught even in the non-Buddhist traditions, one will create causes for higher rebirth, whether they accept a higher rebirth in the next life or not. all the religious traditions which teach love, compassion, and so forth have the causes, condition, the practices creating the condition for higher rebirth. But in connection with the understanding of selflessness and then attaining nirvana or liberation, this is unique to Buddhism. Of course, in Jainism and other traditions, they also talk about liberation or moksha, but they are based on the view of selfhood and ego, and therefore it is unique in Buddhism that higher goal of definite goodness is attained through the understanding of selflessness. And therefore, the real Buddhism should be understood on the basis of the Four Noble Truths. On the basis of that understanding of the Four Noble Truths, you actually understand how to reach the enlightenment or liberation. And therefore, as I mentioned earlier, the Buddha is someone who has the complete understanding or realization and also purification of negativities. And so Dharmakirti's text actually presents Buddhist structure of the Buddhism from the very beginning. And so it also mentions that having gained this rare shape of freedom and fortune, hear, think, and meditate unwaveringly day and night. So this shows that the three practices of hearing or studying, then reflecting and meditating. So through this, what we do is we overcome or get rid of ignorance. And ignorance should be overcome by developing knowledge about what you are ignorant about. And for that, one should first listen or to teachings from someone like a Lama or a spiritual master. And of course, that is on the level of developing the understanding through listening or hearing the teaching. It's just kind of an assumption level where you do not yet have the conviction about the teaching. And then after having listened to the teachings, heard the teachings, then when you actually go over the teaching again and again and reflect and think about the meaning, then you develop a wisdom that grows, that develops through reflection or thinking, and which is in a way inferential cognition, and that is actually very firm. And so the first level is developing an understanding through hearing the teachings and then going over the teaching again and again in your mind, reflecting over them, and then reading other texts. Of course, if you want to study about philosophical views, you can study the philosophical views of Chittamatra, Madhyamaka, Vaibhashika, Sotrantika, and also non-Buddhist traditions. When you study these, then you will see the differences in their understanding, philosophical understandings. And so Bhaviveka, who was a follower of Nagarjuna, in his Madhyamaka Hridaya, the essence of Madhyamaka, he touches on, and he goes through the different philosophical traditions of India. So he actually goes through the different philosophical assertions of the different non-Buddhist traditions and Buddhist traditions that existed in India in those days. And therefore, to develop this wisdom or understanding that is gained through reflection, you need to hear the teachings and also read different books and then see why certain masters have actually said such and such philosophical assertions, and then what are the why certain other masters have criticized them and for what reason and so forth. So understanding that is gained merely through listening to teaching is not so firm or stable, but the understanding that is gained through reflection is very stable. You will have a conviction in the teachings. And so without which you will not really put effort in practicing the Dharma. And so practicing the Dharma or religion has to be done voluntarily. No one can actually force it on you. And therefore, in order to build up that voluntary aspiration for the practice of Dharma, you need to develop your own conviction by using your own knowledge. So without gaining conviction in the points of practice that you develop through reflection, you will not be have the aspiration to do the practice, and therefore it's called you should develop this conviction based on reflection, which in turn comes through hearing the teachings. And then next, verse number 2, attached to your loved ones, you are stirred up like the water, and so forth. And so this shows seeking solitude, or so physically you live in a solitary place, and then mentally you are actually taking yourself away from all kinds of worldly, social kind of distractions. So without physical solitude, if you're amongst society, then you will be, of course, distracted by all kinds of things that are going on in society, and your mind will not you will not be able to focus your mind on your practice. And as I told you about the Catholic monk who lived as a hermit. And then next verse is, by avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions gradually decrease. And so the conditions, the external stimuli for disturbing emotions will reduce by avoiding them. Without distraction, virtuous activities naturally increase. So isolating your mind from all kinds of discursive thoughts or conceptions. With clarity of mind, conviction in the teachings arise, cultivate seclusion, or seek solitude. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So even if you may be physically isolated from the society, but in your mind you have all kinds of thoughts about your loved ones, enemies, and so forth. All kinds of thoughts go on. Living physically isolated is like imprisoning yourself. It doesn't help. Just as you have physically isolated yourself from the society and others, your mind also should be focused single-pointedly on your practice. So merely gaining some kind of a certainty about some point doesn't really make transformation within your mind, but through familiarization with what you have felt convinced about over and over again, then it can help. So, for example, an athlete needs to train themselves. Athletes need to train themselves over months and years and so forth, and then become adept and skilled. And so, familiarization is very important. So, gom in Tibetan means familiarizing. So there are two ways of familiarizing or meditating. One is analytical, and other one is pleasing or focusing meditation without doing much analysis. And so it is also we need also to combine these two, both the analytical and the focusing meditation. So all these discursive thoughts that happen in us, in order for these not to happen, what we need is mindfulness and introspection. So you should think that I am a practitioner of bodhicitta and also a practitioner of emptiness. And therefore, when these negative emotions like anger, attachment, jealousy, and arrogance, so forth, arise in you, you should actually restrain yourself. And therefore, heedfulness is very important. Paying heed or showing restraint is very important, and for that you need to know what you should do and what you should not do, and then accordingly, when you do your practice on a daily basis, you should always show mindfulness and also introspection, checking whether you are actually engaging in the practices or things that you should do or should not do. And therefore, mindfulness helps to keep you in check, seeing what you should do and should not do. And so, for example, as a practitioner, when anger is about to arise in you, you should actually be able to check yourself, or I'm about to get angry. But once you have bursted out in anger, then it's very difficult to do away with it. And therefore, you should be introspective and see that this anger is about to arise in you, and at that point it is easier to actually counter this anger that is about to arise. Once you are angry, full of anger, then it's more difficult for you to restrain. And similarly, it is the same case with attachment. When they are about to arise in you, you should show mindfulness and be introspective about it. And then we should also use analytical meditation. When you do, as we already said, doing reflection after hearing the teachings, that is the analytical meditation that you are doing. So people in any profession, like bankers or businessmen and so forth, they do analysis. So here we are talking about analytical meditation within the context of Buddha Dharma, seeing what is wrong if you do this and what is going to be the advantage if you do that, and so forth. And having done this kind of analytical meditation, then you should place your mind single-pointedly on the object that you have felt certain about, and without doing analysis, just focusing your mind. And then as you develop your concentration further and further, then you should also through this analytical meditation, you develop the wisdom, the vipassana, and then through the focusing meditation, you develop what is known as calm abiding. And so calm abiding is focusing meditation, and vipassana or insight is analytical meditation. Whereas in the highest Yoga Tantra, of course, there comes a time when you just focus your mind. Even in that, there is vipassana. So in order to develop, generally speaking, in order to develop vipassana, you should develop this focused meditation, the single-pointed concentration, without which you will not be able to develop vipassana as such. And so for us beginners, we need to use our time to do analytical meditation and then develop also focusing meditation. So as soon as you wake up in the morning, when your mind is rather alert, fresh, it is going to be quite effective if you do analytical meditation, and also if you can do the focusing meditation. I mean, your mind is fresh, and therefore it's better to do it at that time. Sometimes people think that just not doing any kind of analysis, remaining in some kind of meditation, but not having any sort of clarity in mind. I mean, some people think that they are really in meditation. That's really wrong. Some of my friends have said to me that even after doing long-term meditation, their minds have become rather duller. And this is because of accumulating the mental sinking. So there should, when that happens, there is no alertness. When mental sinking is not, it happens, then you actually are not alert, and therefore there's danger of actually confusing meditation and mental sinking when it comes to a very subtle level. And so it's not enough just being able to stay on the object, but you should also have intense clarity in your mind. And for that, you need to train your mind. And so, if you are interested, in the morning when your mind is rather fresh, first you could do analytical meditation on bodhisattva, and then once you have build it up to a certain degree, then you should just do the focusing meditation. And when you do meditation, you should stay in this vajra posture, and then the two hands should be in meditation posture, and then the spine should be snugly straight, and then your head is slightly bent in front, and your eyes should be focused on the tip of the nose, and then your shoulders should be even, and you're open, and then your breath should be even, natural, and then the tip of the tongue should touch the upper palate. And then your mouth should neither be too open nor too tightly closed, but naturally left. And then your eyes, within your eyes, you should not look anywhere, and should not be widely open. And then your eyes should focus, as it. Although it said it should look at the tip of the nose, but your eyes should focus on a level where it is comfortable to look in front. And your eyes should not be closed as well, because then it helps to have a clarity in mind as well. And then having said in these having set up these physical postures, then you should focus on your breath, in and out breath. So out breath and in breath, when you focus your mind on this in and out breath alone, it actually helps to calm the mind, because usually our mind is distracted to all kinds of objects, external objects. And so here, when you focus on the mind, it is neither distracted by all kinds of things, nor is it taking a very subtle object like your mind. And therefore, you should focus on your in and out breath and count 1 to 21 times. And then focus your mind just on the in and out breath, taking a set of in and out breath, counting as 1. Then you you focus your mind on the in and out breath 21 times. And so this helps to focus your mind. And then in Tantra, there's also the practice of clearing impurities of one's breath in 9 rounds of breath. Should we do it once?
What do you want?
What do you think? Should we do this in and out breath, 9 rounds of breath? So sit in this. We need full picture of His Holiness.
Now careful, may hit your neighbor. Now take insight. 3 times. Three times. Now again. Again, be careful. If you want to hit, then excuse, you see, this is practice, so then you can hit. Okay. Now, both nostril. Nostril. Like that. You see, this one sort of one kind of practice. You see, some kind of intensity of inner air, a little bit sort of relax. So, with the inner, usually I call inner energy or inner air. You see, remain more calm. And then consciousness also, emotion also, a little bit calm. So, and then, and now, you see, concentrate, not sensorial consciousness, the sensorial consciousness, just mental thing. Then visualize some image that we call the image of single-pointed mind. So visualize, for example, one flower, not eye consciousness, in eye consciousness, not concentrate, eye consciousness. Eye consciousness completely ignore, then mental level, some sort of vision, image of certain object, visualize. Then concentrate on it as long as possible. At the beginning, just say 1 minute. One my friend, one American, now over last almost 40 years practice, now he can concentrate 3 hours without any disturbances. So as a result, some actual deeper experience actually, you see, develop like that. So it is possible. And also some practitioner so also, you see, can remain without disturbances 3 hours, 4 hours. So it is possible. We have that kind of ability. Now, for example, first think about where is I, where is self. Analytical meditation. Then eventually you find nothing. So absolutely not like the appearances. The appearances completely disappear. Then, the way to appear, that completely dissolve. Then that moment you can feel some kind of empty. So that moment, your mind single-pointedly focusing on it. And then similarly, thinking about altruism, pros and cons. Altruism, what's the benefit? Hatred, what sort of, harmfulness, like that. Then you develop some kind of full sort of enthusiasm. Oh, altruism, infinite altruism is really wonderful. Then even you see tears, a certain sort of very strong emotion develop. Then concentrate on it. So like that. That's our daily practice. Possibly better in morning. So in order to get a bit earlier in morning for this practice, and you should go to sleep or go to bed a bit earlier. You should sacrifice your nightclub, your dinner. Of course, we as a Buddhist monk, no dinner. So the one advantage, two advantages. One, you can go to sleep a bit earlier. And the second, you're overweight, no danger, no dinner, so you're physical more fit. So then, my daily sort of life, I got up about 3 o'clock in the morning. Then next, for 5 hours, some meditation, mainly analytical meditation. Then some recitations or some visualizations like that. Very useful, very helpful. It's really helpful to maintain your mind whole day. Maintain calm. Very good. And then also the deeper understanding. Every day thinking that way, the day by day difficult, but I think month by month you really feel some deeper understanding. Month by month, year by year, decade by decade. So that's the way to practice single-pointed meditation and analytical meditation. Then,
So with this, we have covered the topic of precious human life. So although we have found this precious human life, and we may think that this is very precious, but because of clinging to permanence, and also where it is impermanent, and because of clinging to purity of it, cleanliness of it, where it is unclean, and because of clinging to some kind of a selfhood where there is no self, and so forth. Because of these 4 different wrong views, we are not able to practice the Dharma sincerely, and we always procrastinate our practice. And so here, the impermanence that we're talking about in this context is the impermanence in terms of the continuity of things. So in connection with the Lamrim practice pertaining to the beings of small scope, we are doing meditation on impermanence, which is gross level, and then the practice pertaining to the beings of the intermediate scope. The impermanence practice is the subtle one, the momentary changing. And then His Holiness read this verse number 4. So, of course, we live our life and then we grow old, and without really being able to achieve much, you may have gained wealth and riches, but then at the end of your life, you will have anxiety. Who will actually take care of this wealth? And you will be doubting or be about whom you should give this wealth and so forth. So there's lots of anxiety. And then when you die, nothing can be taken with you. Everything has to be left behind. So your clothing, your whatever you have, shelter, even this body. And as it says in the verse, loved ones who have long kept company will part. Wealth created with difficulty will be left behind. And so you may have worked very hard to gain money and wealth. You may have millions of currencies and so forth in your banks, but nothing will help. And then consciousness, the guest will leave the guest house of body. And so neither your relatives nor the wealth and your own body will help at the time of death. And so let go of this life. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So this is not saying that you should completely ignore everything of this life, your food and so forth. But of course, you should have food and clothing and so forth, which actually is necessary to sustain your life. To carry on with your practice.
Individual case is a contentment. Practice of contentment is very, very helpful. You see, to reduce greedy feeling. But for big company, these things, you see, we must develop. We must sort of progress, because among 7 billion human beings, many millions, their living standard under poverty. Right? Poverty. So we must further develop economy. So individual case, contentment. For common people, for humanity, further development, making money. So we must make distinction. Then, companion. A companion should be similar sort of way of thinking. You should have friend or companion who have same sort of view, same sort of dedicated for spiritual practice. Otherwise, you see, your neighbor. For example, your neighbor always, you see, alcohol or vodka. And then when you visit occasionally, and he or she may force you a little bit sipping a little bit vodka. And after 1 week, few weeks, or you also, you see, drink more and more like that. So, the companion should be similar sort of way of life, way of thinking. That's very important. It mentioned.
So, verse number 5, when you keep company, your 3 poisons increase. Your activities of hearing, thinking, meditating decline, and they make you lose your love and compassion. Give up bad friends. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And next one shows spiritual friends, spiritual teachers. When you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish the spiritual teacher even more than your own body. This is practice of bodhisattvas.
Must be qualified one. Now, regarding this teaching, the Bodhisattva Yana teaching is concerned, the Guru must have 10 qualities. Firstly, 3 practice of moral conduct. Then practice of morality. Then practice of single-pointed mind, then practice of wisdom. These three are bases. Then scholarly, some fuller knowledge. Or the teacher must have greater knowledge than you. The teacher must have sort of or determination to help student. Scholarly, so fuller knowledge. Some understanding about the shunyata. There are two levels. Shunyata about or understanding about selflessness. Selflessness of persons. Then, sort of, what's the kasota?
Being able to express.
Being able to express. Compassionate. Can carry teaching tirelessly. Selflessness of person, that's the out of three, the beginning. Then this one, the selflessness of phenomena. So these are the quality of teacher. Many years ago, I think about 20 years ago, one Chinese from mainland China came to see me. And he asked me, nowadays, some Tibetan Dharma, they call Dharma Raja. Dharma Raja means, English word, so to say. King of Dharma. So this King of Dharma, at the beginning, some Chinese devotees is very much sort of respect and faith. Eventually, the King of Dharma actually seeking money and women. So he asked me, you should do something. Then I told him, I'm in India as a refugee. I cannot do anything. The important is you, those Buddhists, you should know the quality of proper teacher. So when you met some Dharma king, you should examine and test whether these quality there or not. Till you convince fully, you should not receive teaching, just discussion, talk. That's no problem. As a test, as a testing. Once you fully convince these 10 qualities are there, really really qualified teacher, then you receive teaching. So I told that person like that. So that's very, very important. Otherwise, you see, there are people who really have interest about Buddha Dharma. And sometimes, you see, wicked people exploiting that opportunity. Just very, very careful. So examine, teacher, very important. You should spy on so-called these lamas. You must spy and test like that. once you met really qualified teacher, then you must respect and learn from that person. And respect and faith is very important. Like that. Then,
taking refuge. This next verse. Bound himself in the jail of cycling existence or worldly God can give you protection. Therefore, when you seek refuge, take refuge in the three jewels which will not betray you. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So whatever religion there is, I mean, each religion has their own objects of refuge. So in Buddhism, we have the three objects of refuge, which are the Buddha, the jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel. And so the actual refuge is the Dharma jewel, not the Buddha jewel, nor the Sangha jewel. Why? Because Dharma jewel comprise the true cessation and true path, and so which refers to the having developed the antidote to some kind of negativities and having overcome the negativities through this antidote. And so, therefore, the true path, and which is the antidote, and the true cessation, which is this purification of the negativities from one's mind stream, comprise the Dharma jewel. And so just as a doctor is actually just prescribing you, diagnosing your disease and prescribing the medicine, and therefore the Buddha is said to be like the doctor, and then the Dharma is said to be like the medicine, which actually cures your disease or sickness. And then the Sangha is said to be like the nurses who help you when you have to take the medicines and so forth. And therefore, these three, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, are our objects of refuge. And so in our society, in Tibet and also in the Himalayan regions, there are many spirits who say they are like the local deities and so forth, such as Gyalpos and Zens and so forth. Of course, we may just make offerings to them in terms of incense and some kind of a praise. But if you actually take refuge in them, giving yourself in completely to them, then you will actually be going against the practice of taking refuge. You lose your practice of refuge. And so it says they themselves, being jailed in cyclic existence, they cannot protect us. Here we are talking about refuge in the sense of someone or some principle which can actually lead us out of the samsara and lead us to nirvana. And therefore, what worldly gods can give you protection, it says. Therefore, when you seek refuge, take refuge in the three jewels which will not betray you. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And therefore, I always tell people amongst Tibetans as well as the Himalayan people, so although they may rely on some kind of wrathful deities, whether they be good ones or bad ones, in our Thangka paintings of deities, of course, we do not include those of the malevolent kind of spirits as objects of refuge. And there is also a malevolent spirit called Shugden. Of course, I did propitiate it, and then also my tutor, Tijang Rinpoche, Paponka and Tijang Rinpoche didn't consider Shugden as some kind of object of refuge. They considered him just as some spirit. And so they have not included this Shugden in the tree or of assembly tree of objects of refuge. And in the biography of Pabongka Rinpoche, Dejun Nyingpo, it's very clearly recorded by his secretary, Lobsang Dorji, that the 13th Dalai Lama actually had told that Pabongka Rinpoche that relying on this kind of spirit is tantamount to going against the practice of taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And so, although I did practice, or I did do practice of Shugden in the past, but after doing a thorough analysis, investigation into this, then I finally stopped it. Therefore, I suggest people to not propitiate or worship Shugden. Of course, whether they listen or not, they're up to you. So I have been telling people that if you do propitiate and worship Shugden, then you should not take teachings and tantric initiations and so forth from me. And so regarding Shugden himself, the fifth Dalai Lama recognizes him to be someone who has been born through wrong kind of prayers and aspirations, and then someone who is a malevolent spirit, and then someone who is also harming sentient beings and the Dharma. And so with due to lack of knowledge about Shugden's real identity, I did in the past propitiate Shugden. But then, by later on, after I learned about the identity, real identity of him, then I actually stopped the practice of Shugden. And so, the people who propitiate Shugden are very angry with me. I have heard that people are ready to demonstrate against me in relation to Shugden in Norway. And then I was in America, and there were people who actually demonstrated against me. I really felt pity for them. They do demonstrations without really knowing the truth about Shugden well. And so we need to do our practice by taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha jewels. And then next is reflecting on the suffering of the lower realms of existence. The subduer said that all unbearable suffering of bad rebirth is a fruit of wrongdoing. Therefore, even at the cost of your life, never do wrong. This is the practice of bodhisattvas.
You should say, God bless. So, 자상가 땅에라 수남미부 당불 도왔어.
So this is referring to avoiding non-meritorious karma. So avoiding the 10 non-virtuous actions, 3 of body, 4 of speech, and 3 of mind. And so one should restrain your body, speech, and mind. And because by committing these 10 actions of body, speech, and mind, you are creating causes for lower realms of existence, rebirth in the lower realms of existence. And by refraining from them and cultivating the 10 virtuous actions, it is said that you will attain higher rebirth. And therefore, the goal is higher rebirth, and then the means to reach that is the practice of 10 virtuous actions. And the next verse, number 9. So this verse shows the practice pertaining to beings of intermediate scope, which is with reference to the 400 verses of Ayadeva, where he says in the middle, get rid of the clinging to self. So because of clinging to self, we create karmas because of our attachment and anger. And therefore, in Dhammakirti's Pramanavartika, it says that when the Buddha taught that this suffering should be known, he was actually talking about this conditioned, existential, pervasive suffering, not just the suffering of suffering and the changeable suffering. So one Tibetan scholar has said that even the animals are aware of suffering, the painful experiences that we consider to be undesirable, and even the non-Buddhist practitioners are aware that the changeable suffering is something undesirable, and then the deeper suffering, which is the conditioned existential suffering. And so here, when the Buddha says suffering should be known and have to cultivate or develop this wish to go out of suffering, the suffering here means this kind of psychophysical aggregate and the birth that comes through our karma and delusion. So this kind of condition is considered as the suffering here. So when we go around and round in this samsara through the force of karma and delusion, that is called samsara. And so it says, like dew in the tips of grass, pleasures of these three worlds last only a while and then vanish. So it shows this impermanence in terms of the momentary change. And so this is also taught in the 400 verses, and also in Dharma Dhatu Stova by Master Nagarjuna. He says that teachings on impermanence and suffering, and then selflessness, the grosser selflessness, is to train your mind. The means by which you actually uproot the cause for this, which actually causes us to lose our peace of mind, is the meditation on emptiness. So if you think about the disadvantage or the shortcomings of these negative emotions, then you will actually want to go out of suffering, the samsara. So as long as you have these destructive emotions, you are unhappy, you lose your peace of mind, and you make others also unhappy. And so from the point of view of the Buddha Dharma, these negative emotions, such as our pride, arrogance, attachment, anger, jealousy, and so forth, anger gives us problems, and not love and compassion. And so that in turn happens because the anger happens to us because we have attached to our near and dear ones, and then feel averse to those causing harm to them. And so without that attachment, anger will not arise. So anger and attachment are rooted in this.
We and they. That is the source of problem. We must develop the big us or big me. That means 7 billion human beings, part of us, part of me. That's important. We must develop a certain sort of attitude. Entire 7 billion human beings are actually our brothers, sisters. And instead of some jealousy, instead of some sort of negative feeling, should develop sense of concern on their well-being. Then no room about violence, no room about cheating, no room telling lie. So real peace entirely based on that kind of attitude. So that, irrespective of whether believer or non-believer, through education, through awareness, you see, we can develop that kind of conviction. I think that is very possible. Of course, within my lifetime, I think impossible. But next generation, in their lifetime, I think possible. So this is the point. Now,
and then, in relation to in connection with the 400 verses, where it says, in the end, destroy all distorted views. When your mothers, who have loved you since time without beginning, are suffering, what use is your own happiness? Therefore, to free limitless living beings, to develop the altruistic intention. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And so bodhicitta is rooted in great compassion. And so that great compassion is not just feeling the suffering of others unbearable, but having this determination, this inner strength to actually overcome or to eliminate the suffering of others. Not just having this wish for others to be free from suffering, but to actually work for overcoming the suffering of others is this great compassion. Therefore, you need to see that this compassion, the suffering is something, and the cause of suffering is something that you can uproot, or that there is antidote to it. Because Dharmakirti says that this suffering is not permanent, because the cause of suffering has its antidote, powerful antidote to it. So the cause of suffering is said to have there are forces which which counter them, and so forth. And so forth here may be indicating that the nature of mind is clarity and awareness, the luminosity. So because the cause of suffering has its antidote, and because the mind's basic nature is luminosity, therefore, in the Mahayana Uttara Tantra, it is said that there is a possibility for enlightenment. So otherwise, this term, so forth, I'm not sure what it can mean. Some of my French say that it's not, the term is not so forth, but that it is an instrumental case where the meaning is the cause of suffering can have countermeasures. So liberation is proved by saying that there is powerful antidote against our clinging to true existence and things, and also that these negative emotions are not permanent, that they can be eliminated, that they are adventitious. And so the possibility of overcoming these negative emotions also is understood through the understanding of emptiness. That ignorance, what it holds on to, is something which is not actually true. And therefore, one needs to develop this knowledge, the wisdom that actually sees the reality of things as they are, as it is, which is the opposite of what ignorance sees. And therefore, in one of the commentaries on the Prajnaparamita studies, or Abhisamaya Alamkara, it is said that with wisdom you focus on enlightenment, and with compassion you focus on sentient beings. And therefore, understanding emptiness shows that there is a possibility to overcome our negative emotions and reach liberation. Because you see that what these negative emotions, and particularly the clinging to or grasping at true existence, has no real valid support, and therefore it is possible to overcome these negative emotions, and therefore there is a possibility of liberation or nirvana. And so And then you can also see the possibility of the state of Buddhahood, where you overcome both the obscurations of knowledge and afflictive emotions. And therefore, by understanding emptiness, the wisdom focuses on enlightenment, and with compassion you focus on sentient beings. And therefore there is the possibility of developing bodhicitta, which is defined in Abhisamaya Alamkara as that main mind which is focused to benefit other sentient beings, and to reach the enlightenment, goal of enlightenment for the benefit of other sentient beings. Some people say that, according to Buddhism, desire is something negative. That is not true. Desire in itself is not negative. There is, because we are here in connection with bodhicitta, there are two desire aspirations. There is positive and negative desire. Here, you have the desire to help sentient beings. You have the desire to reach enlightenment, which is within the definition of bodhicitta.
Out of sense of concern of their well-being is positive. Anger out of hatred, that's negative. So we should have more fuller knowledge about these different emotions and what is their differences, what they are what's the different levels, and interconnectedness. These things are very, very important. So, so in order to have this aspiration to desire to help others, you should have the knowledge that all sentient beings across the expanse of space, there's none who has not been your friends or parents and so forth. All suffering comes from the wish for one's own happiness. Perfect Buddhas are born from the thought of help others. Therefore, exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the practice of Bodhisattva. So this shows the practice of equaling and exchanging self and others, which has its source in Ratnavali and also Bodhicitta Vivarana of Nagarjuna, on the basis of which then Master Shandideva gives a very detailed account of developing this kind of bodhicitta through equaling and exchanging others, self and others, in greater detail in Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. So this really is the means by which those practitioners with sharp faculty actually follow to develop bodhicitta, and otherwise thinking about the kindness of other sentient beings, that all sentient beings having been your mother and so forth. I mean, this reason seems to be quite far-fetched for me. And we also go through the reasoning that the number of sentient beings is limitless or infinite, and that there is no sentient being who has not been your mother in the past and so forth. So it's really difficult to gain certainty about the developing bodhicitta. Otherwise, I mean, on the other hand, developing bodhicitta on the basis of understanding this equaling and self, exchanging self and others is really powerful. And so, as Shantideva says, that not only will you be able to have happiness, and not only that you will have reached Buddhahood, but even in samsara you will not have happiness without exchanging self and others. And so there is this process of developing this equaling, exchanging self and others by thinking about the faults of self-cherishing attitude, the excellence or the good qualities of cherishing others, and then actually going into the practice of equaling and exchanging self and others. And so it's the really source of inner peace, inner strength, self-confidence. And also, you see, infinite altruism is the basis of world peace. World peace must come through inner peace. that inner peace also is not discouraged or indifferent, not that way. Full of determination, full of sort of willpower. That brings self-confidence, inner strength. That brings some kind of inner strength. That brings, calm mind. Wonderful, really wonderful. So, thinking more concerned about others' well-being, you get maximum benefit. Think more concerned about your own selfish sort of interest. Actually, you get more suffering, more weak feeling. That brings helplessness, hopelessness, demoralize. Think more about other. And think about shunyata, about bodhicitta. All these things really brings inner strength. So really wonderful. As I mentioned this morning, the Buddhist way of approach is full of courage, full of enthusiasm, not fear, not out of fear. Really, I think, of course, I never state Buddhism is best. I never state. The aspect of religion, all religion is same to some. And then aspect of philosophy, there is differences. But that, to some people, certain philosophical views are more suitable, more effective. So to that person, that kind of philosophical view is best. So like medicine, we cannot say, pick up one medicine, this is best medicine. You can't say. According illness, for this illness, this patient, this pill is best. So religion also like that. According different mental disposition, for this kind of person, mental disposition, this religion is best. Otherwise we can't say religion, this religion is best for whole world. Impossible to say. So in any way, Buddhist way of approach is like that. You see, the thinking and use more positive side and develop enthusiasm, courage, like that. So out of fear, then that creates more sort of weakness. Isn't it? Think like that. Okay. So then, for practice of altruism, then there are sort of factors which destroy this kind of sort of mind. Now, particular sort of advice.
Even if someone out of a strong desire steals all your wealth or has it stolen, dedicate to him or your body, possessions in your virtues, past, present, future. This is practice. But it's the next verse. Even if someone tries to cut off your head when you haven't done the slightest thing wrong, how does compassion take all his misdeeds upon yourself? 14 and 15. Though someone may did right and speak bad words about you in public gathering, looking on him as spiritual teacher, bow to him with respect. This is practice of Bodhisattva. Verse number 16 also, right? And 17. If an equal or inferior person disparages you out with pride, and so forth. And then next, when you are too poor in terms of destitution, and also when you are when you have too much in life, then how to overcome your situation is taught here. Though you lack what you need and are constantly discouraged, are afflicted by dangerous sickness in spirit, without discouragement, take on this the misdeeds and the pain of all living beings. And so when you feel completely discouraged and demoralized, you should think along these lines. And then, when you are very wealthy or have authority and power and so forth, these may also cause distraction. And so, verse number 19 shows that these also can be obstacles to weakening your practice of bodhisattva. And though you may become so it says, though you become famous and many bow to you and you gain riches to equal Vishwaranas, and so forth. And then verse number 20. So verse number 20 shows the antidote or practice which serves as antidote to anger. And then the verse number 21 as antidote to attachment. Where appears, verse number 22, is your mind. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Understanding this, do not take the mind inherent sign of subject or object. This is the practice of Buddhism. So, literally taking this verse, it may give us the understanding of the view of the philosophical view of the Savatantrika Yogacara Savatantrika Madhyamaka tradition, which was started by Shandarakshita, and his disciple also Kamalashila followed it, and then Haribhadra also followed it. So they make also distinction between the gross and subtle selflessness of phenomena as well. Whatever appears is your own mind can also be interpreted to mean that things are merely projected or designated by mind. And so this verse number 22 shows practice during the time of meditative absorption. And then next verse shows practice after coming out of that meditation. Verse number 24. All forms of suffering are like child's death in a dream, holding illusory appearances and so forth. So this shows the antidote to hatred. And then next verses show the practice, the 6 perfections. Verse number 25 onwards. So this is the perfection of generosity. Next verse 26 is the perfection of morality. And then next is the perfection of patience. Next is the perfection of an effort. So understanding that disturbing emotions are destroyed by special insight with calm, abide and cultivate concentration, which passes the 4 formless absorptions. This is the practice of the bodhisattvas. And then verse number 30 shows the perfection of wisdom. Verse number 31 shows how to show mindfulness and also develop introspection and see how to check yourself from wrongdoings. And then verse number 32. And verse number 33, 34. And then verse number 37 shows dedication of whatever merit has been gained through these previous verses. The final verse. So this was written for his own and others' benefit by the monk Tokme, an exponent of scripture and reasoning in the cave of Ngulchu Rinchen. So in our daily practice, in our daily life, whatever understanding you have of the Dharma, so it shows how we should develop gradually, having attained the precious human life to reach the final goal of Buddhahood. And so Adisha has written the lamp for the path to enlightenment after coming to Tibet, and which shows how one should actually, in a step-by-step manner, develop the path leading to enlightenment. And so this text may not give you full understanding of the structure of the Buddha Dharma. And so what we should study are what are known as the 10 instructions that are given in Abhisamaya Alankara, which begins with the teaching, understanding the two truths, understanding the causality, and then on the basis of which you develop understanding of the true nature of things, and then you go into the introduction to the Four Noble Truths, and through that one you will have the understanding of the Buddha, the Dharma jewel, the three jewels, particularly the Dharma jewel. And then, by understanding the nature of the Dharma, you actually develop this reverence for the teacher, and therefore you will see the teacher to be reliable and so forth, and taken as someone who can be taken as role model for yourself. And therefore, in order to develop this true Dharma within yourself, the Dharma jewel within yourself, you should not be attached to the pleasures of this life as well as the pleasures of the next life. And then you should put effort and then develop the four perfect abandonments, and then the miraculous feet and so forth. And then you develop the path, the path of seeing and path of meditation and so forth, which actually shows the broad outline of the Dharma, the general structure of Buddha Dharma.
Perhaps now. First, I think some questions. Few questions. Translator.
Это большое счастье видеть и слышать вас. Вопрос. Как очистить сердце от гордости и зависти?
We are very happy to see you here, Your Holiness. And the question is, how to free the heart from jealousy and pride, arrogance.
Already mentioned here. Read carefully. Then okay. No need to answer. Yes. Next question.
Your Holiness, Darshidele, I represent Estonian Buddhists. There's many of us here from different Buddhist organizations and sanghas, and we would like to wish you a long life, full of health, many, many more years. And we have a short request. Can we also make a group photo with you?
What? What?
They would like to have a picture with you, a group photo with the group of Estonian Buddhists who are here would like also to have a group photo with you.
Oh. Okay, now here, difficult to manage.
But how could we
I
do
think
that?
maybe after sort of session,
Okay.
you go outside your
Okay.
group, and then we can take, no problem.
Thank you.
When limited number, then I take photo, group photo, group by group. Like in Delhi also, you see, we do that. But now here, you see, too many people and difficult, and time also limited. So therefore, I think your special group, go outside. Then when I passing through that, we can take photo. Okay.
Здравствуйте, Ваше Святейшество. Вот. Еще раз хотим вас поблагодарить за то, что вы нам предоставили такую очень прекрасную возможность увидеться с вами, послушать вас. Вот. Мы все говорим о сострадании, да? Мы каждый день молимся за благо, да, всех живых существ на земле. Но есть такое понятие, как жалость. Да? А где вот эта тонкая грань между жалостью и состраданием?
What?
So we would like to thank you again for this precious possibility to listen to your teachings. And the question is, we pray every day for the well-being of all the living beings. But where is the difference between compassion and empathy or pity? Pity towards, you can feel a compassion or you can feel just empathy. What is the difference?
I don't know. This, according to this English word, empathy and compassion, still I do not know what's the real sort of differences. I don't know. Usually, chamba, kindness is something wish to get happiness. That's chamba. Sawa, ningji means wish to overcome suffering. That I know, but this empathy, pity. Oh, that is, pityness. You look down. Oh, poor. How bad, how poor. So there is some kind of tendency. You are a little bit sort of better position. That's wrong. The Bodhisattva was sort of compassion, respect. You consider lower than that person, than that sentient being. Even an insect. You should think, oh, I'm a human being. But certain sort of emotion, even worse than that animal, insect. Their mind quite simple. So not much sort of, sophisticated sort of, negative things. We quite sophisticated sort of negative sort of emotions. So from that viewpoint, we are worse than that small insect. So thinking this line, so always respect other. You consider lower. So that's the proper way. Yes.
Ваше Святейшество, хочется от лица санкт-петербургских буддистов поблагодарить вас от всего сердца, от всей души за то, что вы несете мир и любовь на всей нашей планете, за то, что вы еще долго будете жить и дарить всем надежду и любовь. Спасибо вам большое.
Not a question.
Yes.
Just words of thanks. And,
What?
it was the words of thanks and wishing you long life, basically, from the Buddhists of St. Petersburg, not a question.
No
There is
question.
no question, no.
Okay, thank you.
Ваше Святейшество, сегодня мы очень много времени посвящаем общению в интернете. И, конечно же, общение в интернете отличается от реального общения, и в том числе в интернете очень много буддийских сообществ. Но так как в интернете нет определенных границ, собираются множество последователей из различных школ, вследствие чего часто рождаются споры, которые иногда перетекают в конфликты. И все же в интернете нам не хватает учителей. И я хотел узнать ваше мнение о таком явлении, как буддизм в интернете.
Your Holiness, today we spend much time in the internet. We spend much time not communicating with each other, but communicating through internet. And there are many groups and Buddhist groups in the internet also. And sometimes they discuss things, and sometimes it comes even to conflicts. So what is your opinion about the internet and this sphere, the Buddhism and internet?
Although I never use the internet, I don't know. But of course, very useful. So internet itself, nothing wrong, very good. Good facility, helpful. But depend on user. If you use these machines properly, very useful. If you use for hatred, then negative, like that. So any machine, technology itself, neutral. Entirely depend on user. Like in nuclear physics. Use properly, good. Use wrong way, destructive, harmful. Even medicine. You see, user use wrong way, harmful. Right way, helpful, like that. Next question.
Здравствуйте, Ваше Святейшество. Обращаясь к вам от всего тувинского народа и желаем вам долголетия. И наше старшее поколение и весь тувинский народ надеется и молится, что вы посетите нашу священную землю. Спасибо. Вопрос мой в том, что с точки зрения буддизма, как можно объяснить замершую беременность? То есть, когда плод останавливает развиваться в утробе матери, это карма самой женщины или самих детей, еще не родившихся? Что можно и нужно сделать, чтобы они имели хорошее перерождение? Спасибо.
Your Holiness, the question is, if a woman is pregnant and then the pregnancy is interrupted, like for natural causes, so what can...
Pregnant?
Yeah, pregnant, but the pregnancy is interrupted. Baby dies inside, miscarriage. Baby dies inside the mother's womb.
Killed?
Not killed, just naturally.
Oh, yes.
So what are the proper ways to, what shall a person do to ensure the better rebirth for this child? And
Really, either by nature dead, then remove. That's not important matter. You see, sometimes you see people, you see taking special care about dead body. According to Buddhism, this is not important. Important is our mind. So no problem. No problem. The dead body, if put on altar, good rebirth, and put underground bad rebirth. No, no differences. The dead body, just dead, nothing. So important is mind. While you're alive, use our mind properly. That makes effect next life. The body, not much differences. Whether you burned, whether you bury, or throw on water, no differences. Or give birds, no problem. I mean, no differences. Next question.
Приветствую.
Is a question. This is a question. Then okay, like that. Yeah.
Приветствую.
One great Tibetan Lama, really great one, a good scholar, and good practitioner. Usually, we say there is some kind of tradition. Lama passed away, then the follower or his disciple, usually you see, burned the Lama's body, cremate. So then he asked his disciple at the end of his life, now my body must give birds, vulture. At least it's some sort of benefit to vulture. Burning, just waste of that body. 시차로. 저 로드 가르치면 책임해봐. Oh, then the mother, although you see, each sort of what's the experience, you see, due to its own previous causes. So at that level, you can't exchange. Once you committed, you have to face the result. If someone else is committed, you never get sort of result on you. So however, parent and children, teacher and disciple, and same family, there's some special connection. Same family, connection of wealth. The parent, connection of relative. Connection, or say the teacher and student, some tamsik kareta, relation with, I don't know, yes, some special relation. So therefore, for Lama or for student, the other side play some effect. Children, for children, parent, some special sort of prayer may some help. So children pray specially for parent, some effect. Same family member, you see, one member, a special sort of effort for virtuous work, meant for other family member, some effect. So therefore, a mother, some kind of some virtuous work, and dedicate that merit, dedicate to your children. The dead child, some connection, some benefit. So for example, when my mother passed away, I recite a certain mantra like that, dedicate for her. So we do that. So like that. Okay. Next question?
Приветствую, Святейшество. У меня к вам вопрос-предложение. Как вы так смотрите, чтобы собраться всеми религиями мира и создать какую-нибудь универсальную религию безусловной любви и процветания, где не было привязывания человека к Богу, где люди спокойно могли бы общаться, передаваться опытом и развивались, и не ездили по миру и не спрашивали, ты веришь там в ислам, нет, ты не наш. Там, ну, не было разделения между людьми. Что вы думаете на этот счет?
So the question is, do you think is it possible to create a universal religion so that people are not divided? They do not ask, are you Christian or Muslim, or they just live all together and they believe in kindness and love. Do you think is it possible to do it?
I think love, compassion, these are, I think, a universal religion. But then each different major tradition, each one have some special, special method or special aspect. So it is really worthwhile to keep these different traditions. Meanwhile, should think about the real aspect of religion. That's the practice of love, or forgiveness, these things. Aspect of philosophy, differences, but same purpose. Then also I think necessary, we should make distinction. Another aspect, that's cultural aspect. So the religious aspect, more or less, all major religions same. Physical aspect, differences, but same purpose. Then another thing, cultural aspect. For example, when Jainism developed in India, and then soon after that, Buddhism developed. So at that period, too many animal sacrifice took place. So actually it affect the farmers, agriculture. So because of that circumstances, that reality, special emphasis, ahimsa, vegetarianism. Then I think Muslim, when Muhammad start preaching, the cultural aspect, the existing that area, nomad, I think a lot of crime, maybe. So because of that, the Quran also, you see, emphasis laws, Sharia law, because of these circumstances. So I think that we should look cultural aspect. So cultural aspect, the society, way of life, system change. So cultural aspect, I think, is possible, some change. Certain cultural aspect develop at the certain area, certain circumstances. This is certain emphasis. So the situation about society, some change, then these sometimes could be outdated. So Buddhism, for example, Buddhism basically treat equal. Buddha specially emphasis because of caste system at that time. Buddha special emphasis in Buddhist practice or among the Buddhist no differences about caste. Member of royal family or king and beggar, same. Buddha, special emphasis there. So, since you see, against caste system, the Buddha you see, must sort of against discrimination, sex. So basically, Buddha give equal right, male bhikshu, female bhikshuni. At the same time, cultural aspect. At that time, you see, male, little bit sort of considered more higher. So when bhikshu and bhikshuni together, bhikshu sit front, bhikshuni behind. So these things, I think, cultural aspect. I feel like that. So 3 aspects: religious aspect, philosophical aspect, cultural aspect. So cultural aspect, I think, time to time, or different area, I think sometimes we need modification. Like that. Okay, next question.
Добрый день, Ваше Святейшество. Мы прослушали от вас изложение 37 практик Бодхисаттвы, и вот вопрос. Буддист, когда на его страну, так сказать, нападает агрессор, что должен делать? Брать в руку вот такую вещь, молитвенный барабан, или все-таки автомат?
So the question is, what should a Buddhist do if its country is invaded by an aggressor? Should he or she just pray or fight for his or her country? What will be the proper way?
That we have to judge the greater benefit to greater number of people. I think yesterday also I mentioned is under different circumstances. Now, for example, in Vinaya, certain things at the beginning prohibited, but then after different circumstances, sometimes Buddha allow change. So sometimes at the beginning Buddha allowed, but under different circumstances he prohibited. So it depends on the circumstances, not sort of absolute rule. This according to circumstances, the important is the maximum benefit to larger number of people. That is the basis of the decision, right? How to decide. So briefly, yesterday also I mentioned good purpose, save some life, little lie is permissible, like that. So then Buddha's one story, a Jataka story. One time, it's Buddha's previous life, one was the merchant. So he was the leader of the trade, sheep. So among his was the crew member. There are 500 people. So one person actually thinking seriously to kill rest of the member, 499. So then Buddha warned him, don't do that. Very sinful, very negative. But that person still carry the thinking to kill the rest of the member of the crew. Then in spite several warnings given by Buddha's previous life, the leader of the merchant. Then finally, he thought, killing that person, he got sin killing one person. If he allowed, out of his own concern, restrain harming other, then let that person kill 499 people. And firstly, 499 people killed, suffer. The person also, you see, committed sin, killing 499 person killed. So he calculate. So instead of that kind of sort of major suffering, he sacrificed killing one person. Then he decided to kill that person. So actually, it creates a lot of sort of virtues. Clear? That killing, not anger, not out of anger, hatred, but compassion, sense of concern, of save 499 persons' life and save killing 499 person sin. So, like that, you see, according to circumstances. Then, like you see, violent sort of, because of the reaction, right? Violent sort of also the approach. Approach Marianda, because it's just a reaction, reaction. How this, again, you see, the same sort of the theory, not the concept of we and they. Think seriously. Long-term benefit and benefit larger number of people. So calculate using these things. So always to say, any action before committed or action you see right or going to be right or wrong is, you see, weight, pro and cons, like that. That is Shantadeva's Bodhisattva, because Bodhisattva Jaya Avatara, clearly you see mentioned these things. It is very important. Then also, you see one text wrote by Arya Asanga, Changsa, Kasindadi. Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva Bhumi. Very detailed sort of explanation about Bodhisattva's precepts. Wonderful. Like that. Next question. Thank you.
Намо Гурая, Ташиделик, Мендут. Здравствуйте. Мне очень интересна такая традиция несектарного подхода Римы. Это, то есть, из истории, это объединение великих учителей различных традиций. И вы также очень часто призываете буддистов к несектарному подходу. Вот мне такой вопрос. Скажите, пожалуйста, как выполнять практики этой традиции Римы? Это надо делать линию преемственности одной традиции, а к другим традициям относиться толерантно? Или это как бы делать по очередности, каждый день выполнять каждую практику различных традиций? Спасибо.
The question is about the Rime tradition, non-sectarian Rime. Yes. So if we try to follow it, how shall we practice? Shall we practice just one lineage and then just take some practices from other traditions? Or shall we do it like one day, one tradition, the other day, the other tradition?
I think one sort of big root, then gradually many branches. So you see, Tibetan tradition, Nyingma tradition, Kagyu tradition, Sajja tradition, and within Kagyu, Dugong Kagyu, Drukpa Kagyu, Taglung Kagyu, Shangpa Kagyu, Drukpa Kagyu, like that. So, 4 main branches and further 8 branches, like that. So, so sometimes even in Tibet also is sometimes sectarian, quite serious sectarian. But at the same time, I think a non-sectarian sort of approach. Also, you see, last several centuries, you see, there are, I think, something like two traditions. One, strictly non-sectarian. One, a little bit sectarian. So in the West, in early 19, I think, 60s, 70s, a little bit sectarian. Some people in the West, when we met, usually you see, they ask, well, what is your sect? Kagyu, or Nyingma, or Saja. That I think too much sort of narrow-minded thinking. We must think about Nalanda tradition. That's the same root. Satya, Kagyu, Gilo, Nyingma, all, you see, study these Nalanda masters' text. Then Tantrayana, different deities, different mandalas, then you see there are differences. That's minor. Even Satya, many different deities. At Giluk also many different deities. So you can choose one particular deity, like that. So therefore, now I think your point, you see, non-sectarian means, you see, study, receive, teaching, all traditions, and then analyze. This tradition, you see, emphasizes this. This tradition emphasizes this. So if you have fuller knowledge and a deeper understanding, then same. I follow sincerely non-sectarian. I take ideas or sort of teachings from Nyingma tradition, Dzogchen tradition, very, very helpful. And also Kagyu tradition, Saja tradition, and Gelug tradition. Study these texts more thoroughly. I think the better tradition in Gelug tradition. Previously, Saja, wonderful. Now, I think nowadays, Gelug tradition is the best as far as study is concerned. All these major texts. With fuller knowledge about all these major texts, then Nyingma tradition, Dzogchen, sort of practice, very helpful. And particularly, in order to understand about Bodhisattva's certain practice, a subtle level of mind, the Dzogchen practice, very helpful to get more deeper understanding. Similarly, in order to know the Dzogchen sort of idea, some of the Bodhisattva's explanation is very, very helpful. If you look just one book and remain there, then your knowledge is still limited. So open, receive this teaching, this tradition, and then analyze. It's very, very helpful. As I mentioned earlier, the four major different schools of thought, and also different non-Buddhist school of thought. Study all this. Very helpful to get deeper understanding. So non-sectarian, that way. Not one day this, second day this, no, not that way. And then if you go that, and you have to prepare different hats. One day yellow hat, one day red hat, one day black hat, one day without hat. I always teasing. Yeah. Look, Buddha, no hat. We as a follower, we really pay much, particularly Tibetan Buddhists, pay much attention about color of hat and shape of hat. Nonsense, not important. 다 배제 심지 유셔문로다. 배제 다 리두다. So next, I think two questions. Now not much time. One here. First one here.
Okay. Ваше Святейшество, я представляю Республику Бурятия. В 2002 году наша республика и весь мир получила такое чудо, которому современная наука не может дать объяснение. Можете вы прокомментировать феномен нетленности тела Дашидаржо Тагилова и его бессмертия?
This is a question about from Buryatia. In 2002, they recovered the body of Lama Itigelov, you know. So how could you comment on this phenomena?
You see, it is possible. You see, after death, you see, body remain fresh. I was told one Christian priest, I think a few hundred years, still remain very fresh. I was told. So it is possible. In Tibet also, you see, there are some cases during Cultural Revolution or before, when some destruction of some stupa, some dead body still remain very fresh. It found like that. It happened like that. I think some different causes. I think mainly spiritual experience. Good, thank you. Next, now last question.
Уважаемое Святейшество, вы для меня ангел-хранитель, и вы почему-то у меня во сне появляетесь и указываете, как, что делать. И я благодарю вот эту землю, народ, петербургский доцан, который позволил мне с вами встретиться. И у меня вопрос, позвольте с вами, петербургскому доцану, который приехали сфотографироваться. И вопрос, в Бурятии люди очень вас ждут. В этом году, в августе, в Монголию вы приедете?
The lady is from Buryatia, and she asks, will you come to Mongolia this year? Will you come to Mongolia this year? She would like to know.
So although previously the color chakra initiation in Mongolia this year, but that now postponed. But short visit, mainly some dialogue with scientists, organized combinedly one university, Ulaanbaatar, one university, and then one organization in America, Minor Life Institution, jointly as organize one meeting. So time not yet fixed. Which month, I don't know. Of course, after July, maybe August, I don't know. So that depends on Mongolian government. Like that. And then cultural initiation, most probably 2015, next year. That's more or less certain. If you want to come, welcome. And test some of the Mongolian food. Mongolian food, a lot of meat, too much meat. One Tibetan delegation in, I think, 1952. So they also, you see, include the touring Inner Mongolia. So after they returned, they told me, oh, in Inner Mongolia, breakfast also meat, lunchtime also meat, dinner also meat. So then really fed up meat like that. Okay, thank you. Now, completed. So for the time being, for this time, now, so this time, now 4 sessions, 2 days, now completed. Now actually, some Russians, you see, they expressed to me this kind of sort of discussion. I mean, they want continue. I mean, they want next year also. So then also, then also, Latvian parliamentarians, some I met, they also, you see, very much sort of appreciate this is some sort of discussion. The local people, and also this is some Russians from Russia. They very much sort of welcome. So I think most probably next year again we will meet. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.